Welcome everyone, hope you had a great day today. This will be a first part of a 4-part series where I'll be going over every single grenade for every single character in DRG. So let's get right into it, and start out with Scout's grenades. So again, this will be a 4-part series, and hopefully those videos will come out somewhat soonish, but I'll try and get to them as soon as possible, so either way, let's just get right into Scout's grenades. So let's start off with IFG. The IFG, you can have 6 of them. They slow down targets within their radius, which is 3, to 25% of their movement speed, and attack and animation speed, which is basically attack speed as well. And they cause all bugs to take 30% extra damage while in their radius, and they have a duration of 15 seconds. So, and also, our dwarves are not affected by this, only bugs are, so anything hostile to you will get affected, but anything outside of that is completely fine. So a drawer can walk right through it and you'll be fine. So as such, this is a very good set and forget weapon for close support basically. If you see engineer getting like stuck in a bunch of bugs, throw the grenade in them and in his general direction in like the swarm he's in, and it'll work pretty well because all the bugs will be slowed down 25% of their attack speed and movement speed. So 20 grunt guards and like slashers and stuff are pretty terrifying as well as the grunt guards, but they'll be a lot less dangerous when they attack a fourth of their attack speed, so pretty good. And that'll help engineer a lot because not only will they take 30% extra damage, so its sentries and his weapons will do pretty well against them, but he won't be affected by him at all, so that is also pretty good. And also, IFGs are also pretty good for dealing with Praetorians, Bulks, and Oppressors, because first off, lowering their movement speed, which is not the best, to basically like 25% of that is basically making them immobile. So very often you'll just make them immobile, so it's just like, yeah. Which makes it a lot easier to get around them, because very often Bulks, Oppressors, and and Praetorians are, the main problem with them is that they're often very bulky in these block areas, but making them immobile makes it a lot easier for some teammates to, scout can easily get around them, but it can definitely help with drawer, gunner, and engineer, because they can't have an easy grapple hook way to get out every situation, so throwing IFG in front of a bulk, for example, can allow gunner to get around them, and not get pinned into a corner, so it's just very efficient in that way. And also, another thing to note with this grenade is that it has a special electrocution effect. It's not like regular electrocution where it has a damage over time effect, but it still counts technically as electrocution. So, in the case of some mods, which we'll show very shortly, right here, more damage to targets that are in a electric field. So if Scout, or I think Engineer has a mod or two that are basically the same thing. So any I think Engineer has a mod, but if any character has a bonus damage against electrical field enemies, there's your easy electrical debuff for so that Engineer who just got benefits from having the IFG can also now have bonus damage if his weapon is modded with bonus electrical damage or bonus damage against electrified targets. So that's also very useful. So yeah, so you not only is that engineer dealing with like slower enemies that now do like a fourth of their attack speed and take 30% extra damage, but also his weapons, assuming they're modded, to with that electrified bonus damage, can actually get a benefit from that as well, so that's pretty good. And another thing is that carry amount is 6. Now normally a lot of grenades are around 4, and that's a little bit limiting because, unless you get like a good group of stuff together, throwing a grenade into it can be a little bit less, can be difficult is the best way to put it, because you want to get value out of your grenades, obviously. And such, throwing a grenade in like a bug or two, or like a single Praetorian by itself, can be a little bit difficult to weigh, because often you want to throw like a grenade into like a swarm of 20 grunts with a Praetorian, for example, instead. But since it has 6 maxing hold at once, the IFG can be used pretty ribbly, ribbly. It's like, what time is it? 1:30 a.m. So yeah, I may have a little bit of trouble talking right now, or explaining complex thoughts apparently at this point. So I do apologize if I sound absolutely blasted out of my mind right now. Get a decent sleep schedule, everyone. But yeah, you can throw these around pretty often just because, again, it's like there's 6 of them you start off with, and then for every resupply, you get 3 more. So, very often you're just able to throw them out however you want. It's like, oh, Praetorian, here you go. Oh, Engineer, you're dealing with like 10 grunts that are on top of you. Here you go. Oh, Gunner, you're dealing with a bulk. Here you go. It's like you're able to throw them out pretty often, and it's like they'll always get value because, like, again, it's like dealing 30% extra damage to a Praetorian oppressor or a bulk is pretty good because they're often big bullet sponges, which take a lot of ammo. And as such, reducing the amount of ammo spent is pretty good because very often a lot of missions are endurance matches and you need to conserve ammo. So, instead of a Praetorian taking 100 bullets, instead him taking 70, it does matter quite a bit. And again, it's also a bulk takes 200 bullets, for example. I know that's bulks take way more, but that's just theoretical. And now he instead takes about 160 bullets. That's pretty good as well. And again, this goes for grunt swarms and everything else like that. So IFG is very good. It's one of the best grenades in the game, and it's one of the best crowd control in the game because, again, you're able to throw them out often, easily, and they do their job pretty well. Next grenade is the Cryo Grenade. This is very simple. It's a freeze grenade. It's a cold can, basically. It's a can that froze. Cryo Grenade. Very obvious what it does. It has a carry amount of 4, and has an effect radius of 6. Not much to really go on, but it's a Cryo Grenade. It basically instantly flash freezes Praetorians and grunts, and pretty much anything smaller than that. Though oppressors and bulks and larger targets may take 2 or more grenades to fully freeze. So this is very simple. Freeze is pretty good effect to have. If a creature is frozen, they'll take triple damage from direct sources, which is very good because I'll go back to what I'm currently using. The Plasma Carbine. Direct damage of 17, and this thing fires very fast. Tripling that basically makes any Praetorian melt if it's frozen. So this is very, very good for a combo piece, basically. You throw a grenade, freeze a Praetorian and, a few grunts or maybe exploders next to it, and you just sweep the area with the Plasma Carbine or any other weapon you may have. And very often they'll just go poof, basically, into like ice shards mist. Like, you just obliterate them. Because again, triple damage is very good. So, also making enemies immobile, and basically converting their armor and weak points to standard, like, flash hitbox, I guess the best way to put it. Because when stuff is frozen, their armor and weak points basically freeze, and it's all one giant hitbox. So while you won't get the benefits of, the weak points, you won't get a negative of the armor. So, and plus you're doing 3 times damage, so it's like you don't really care about the weak point that much anyways, so it's pretty good. But yeah, it's a very good weapon. It's a very good grenade overall. So, weapon is a grenade is a weapon. It's the same thing. So, but yeah, it's very good overall. However, I do have some little niche issues with it, and that's mostly because despite it being very good, and again, effect radius is pretty large. I think it's about double of a IFG. It only has 4 grenades, and it's like, oh, that's 2 less. That's not that much. Yes, but also no, because you only get 2 for resupplies, and you only start off with 4. Well, at IFG, you get 6, and you start off, and you get 3 per resupply. That matters a lot, because this makes this grenade a lot more niche when you have to use it, because, like, this is something you do not want to use on, like, 10 exploders, obviously, is pretty good. never mind. That's a very good example. Like, you never want to use on like 2 or 3 exploders, for example. Even if it's right next to a dwarf, which is also pretty bad because this will also freeze your teammates. Unlike the IFG, this thing does not discriminate. It will freeze everything. So, if drawer has a problem with exploders right next to him, throw the grenade, you freeze him and exploders at the same time. So, that's a big issue, especially in a swarm where everything's swarming around you, because it turns out being forced immobile and helpless in the middle of a swarm, pretty bad. But also, another thing to note of is that any on-death effects like exploders, bulks, and, stuff like that, and Praetorians, if you freeze them and then kill them while they're frozen, they don't have their on-death effects. So, if you want to avoid a bulk from exploding, or exploder, or Praetorian from releasing its, death cloud, just freezing them is a good way, and it's very simple cryo grenade. But, again, it's like, you can't throw them away, like, as easily as, or throw them away. You can't use them as easily and as, like, commonly as, like, the IFG, because, like, you want to get a decent amount of value out of it, because you won't have many of them. Like, a Praetorian may be good, yeah, but preferably you want to try and get, like, 2 Praetorians, or maybe, like, quite a few grunts alongside. Like, you're kind of incentivized to get the most value out of your grenades, and it's like, with only 4 initially and getting 2 extra per resupply, it's difficult to really find a perfect situation where that's always useful. When it, like in the best case scenario, like you deal with a Praetorian, a few grunts on the side, which isn't that uncommon, it's pretty good. Like you do a pretty good job. But the problem is, due to Deep Rock being a 3D space, and like bugs can come at you from all sides, getting a situation where you feel really happy about how the grenade goes, and like finding a decent clump of stuff to freeze can be sometimes difficult. So, a very good grenade, but again, it's like, due to how DRG works and how bugs kind of spawn, finding a solid group to really freeze can be a little bit difficult, and as such, you may feel a little bit about like the output of a grenade if you don't feel like it's perfectly like efficient, I guess is the best way to put it. But a very good grenade, when it goes well, it goes well. Like if you freeze like 10 exploders, you feel pretty happy about it. But it definitely does hurt when you're not really getting a good chance to use it. So yeah, a very similar grenade to a freeze grenade, Pheromone Canister. So basically, this is actually it's 2 effect radius less. That's all. I guess it's like a exact copy of the freeze grenade for radius, but no, it actually is slightly smaller, which makes sense because Pheromone Canister is a little bit more powerful with its effect, and that effect is pheromone. Basically, pheromone makes the bugs attack each other. If a bulk or a grunt or a Praetorian is covered in pheromones, they will be treated as a valid target by nearby bugs, basically. And this is very effective because very often the Praetorian that's covered in pheromones will attack the grunt that is attacking it because, pheromones. And that will basically clog up those 2 bugs and any other bugs nearby. Now, of course, this is a little bit finicky because the AI of the game, like sometimes the bugs will go for it, sometimes they won't. But, very often pheromone can often take up like 3 to 4 bugs if it's a grunt, and it can take up quite a bit more if it's a Praetorian. Like it can actually clog up the bugs quite a bit while the duration's going on. And again, they're attacking each other, so they'll do damage to each other. So it isn't like, oh, they're just stalemate where it's like they're just smashing against each other but nothing's really happening. No, they will actually damage each other, and they will actually take damage, and like you will be proactive, but it won't be much damage. Like bugs, even on like has 5, won't do much damage to each other. Like they'll go at each other, but you're very unlikely to kill even a normal grunt. Well, that with pheromones and them attacking each other, swarmers will go down. All that stuff, like small creatures like that will go down. But besides that, it's very unlikely that in the resulting melee that much damage will be done. But that isn't really the point. The main point is basically clogging swarms basically. And since this does not affect, you know, your fellow teammates, so this is very similar to the IFG, where you see like engineer like 20 bugs, like 18 grunts of various types, and 2 Praetorians. Throw Pheromone Canister, engineer does not get affected, but every other bug starts mauling each other to death basically, and that, yeah, it just clogs up the entire swarm because not only are they attacking each other, but every other bug looks at them and tries to kill them as well. So basically, you're able to clog up an entire cavern worth of bugs basically if you get a good pheromone canister off. However, that's one of the main problems because normally this is a very good grenade. I used it a lot myself. However, there is something called special bolt pheromone, and for the new crossbow weapon that was recently added in the recent update, so, or the previous update, the new update is coming like 7 days, so yeah. Which I'm not really worried about because as far as I know, the grenades aren't going to be changed that much or at all, so I kind of feel comfortable even though there's an update coming up to talk about grenades in like this sort of fashion. So that's the reasoning why it's talking about this so close to a new update being launched. But yeah, pheromone bolts. This is the same thing as the pheromone grenade. It applies the same effect. However, there is multiple differences. First off, the bolt is much longer range. As long as the crossbow bolt can hit a target, you can get a pheromone off. You don't have to worry about like lobbing a grenade at a relatively short range. If you see a target and you just get a good shot off, you will pheromone it. Across rooms, like 50 meters plus. Very little issue. There's a lot of times where I saw a Praetorian's like, oh, you should get pheromoned, and he got pheromoned because I got a shot off. And another thing is, there's a lot of special ammo you can get from this. Special ammo is the crossbow's main gimmick, I guess is the best way to put it. And combined with how I run it, you're able to basically get... Let me just pull this up real fast. So you're able to get, you know, ammo or special ammo. Now you're able to get, normally you can get 9 special bolts of pheromone. With this, you're able to get 4 extra, and with this, overclock, you're able to get 3 more, and increase the effect. Which is actually much longer than the, well, it's a second and 0.2 longer than a normal pheromone duration. And it's like, very often, that's again quite a lot of pheromones. So basically, you have a 4 times amount of pheromone bolts as you would have grenades. Now, a major difference that's actually negative for the bolt is that you can only hit one person or one bug with the pheromone or plant because spitballers and Korwalks, but you can only hit one target with a pheromone and actually have it take effect. You won't. Like, if you throw a grenade at a Praetorian, if there's a grunt nearby, it'll get covered in pheromone. You shoot a bolt, it'll only hit the Praetorian and only pheromone the Praetorian. Like, it'll only hit the target you hit directly. You won't have any AoE pheromone stuff. Which honestly isn't that big of a deal, because the pheromone canister basically relies on having a large group to really be effective. And very often you don't really have that situation because very often again it's like the bugs just come in from different directions. Like you have like 20 grunts here, 20 grunts here to come from different directions, or very often it's not even that. It's like 5 grunts, and maybe like back here, like against another wall, 5 more grunts come down different directions. So very often you won't really be able to get a good pheromone canister off because very often your teammates will just kill them before they can even get close. Because, you know, grunts and like a good portion of targets at long range just melt very often. So pheromone canister won't really be that great unless suddenly like, oh, has 5, 30 grunts come out of a tunnel basically in one way. Which in that case is very good, but in most situations where you get like 5, and like 5 grunts coming in same like different directions, very often the bolt shank of the special bolts are pretty good because again it's like you only need the pheromone like a single Praetorian or like a Praetorian and like a grunt guard to really get what you want out of a clogging effect, basically. Because very often, like, first off, you distract the Praetorian or whatever target you pheromone, besides like bulks. Bulks will not attack the stuff that's attacking them, because yeah, if they were to attack, everything will just die. So I guess that's something they coded into the game, because I have not seen a pheromone bulk respond to being attacked by a glyphic grunt, for example. So that's something to keep in mind. But very often, when something gets attacked while it's pheromone, it will fight back. And very often, like, usually AI is a little bit weird, but usually you can, if you pheromone a Praetorian, for example, I would say a good guess for amount of bugs it'll attract and like distract from like your teammates will be around 3 to 5. And like, so like if you pheromone a Praetorian, you can expect a rough average like maybe 4 glyphic grunts nearby to take notice and come after it, which will also distract a Praetorian, because the Praetorian will respond, and as such you basically got 5 bugs basically distracted for you. And again, like 16.2 seconds with my current build is pretty good. It's actually a little bit longer than the Pheromone Canister. And it's like, that's all you really need. The problem with this grenade, honestly, is oversaturation. In the good, like 99, like, percent of situations, you just won't have enough bugs in a general enough area to really get this stuff working. Because either the bugs will die from your teammates, or there isn't enough of them, or they come from different directions. So when this works, it works amazingly well. Because again, like, pheromoning like 15 bugs will basically just attract the entire cavern worth of bugs right into that mosh pit, and Engineer will just nuke them and swarm's done. Just like they're just turned to ash. It's like in a blink of an eye, like the entire swarm is just dead. And it's very effective. And also, another fact is interesting I learned today while testing out these different grenades and like pheromones and all that stuff. Pheromones actually affects robots. Robots will actually go after other robots that are pheromoned. I have no idea why, but okay, sure. It's like, it works for me. So yeah, it's like, as far as I know, every single enemy, even if they're mechanical, goes after pheromones. I guess it makes sense if like the robots have like certain like sensors and like the pheromones overloads them, so it's like, oh, I must shoot this. So I guess that makes sense. But yeah, again, it's like the problem with grenade is oversaturation. Very often you don't really need this. If you're going to run pheromone bolts, you don't need this at all whatsoever, unless you're really going for a build where it's like, I'm going to clog the entire swarm and every other swarm for like the entire mission. But if you're running like Zukov and Plasma Carbine, okay, that pheromone can actually be pretty useful. Like, this is again a very good grenade, like a very useful grenade, but again, it's like, since you can only have 4 and resupply only brings you 2, you're not really inclined to reuse it that often, like small targets, because like you'll feel pretty bad when you use this on like 2 or 3 grunts and that's it. At that point, you might as well be using the bolts from the crossbow. But I would say overall, this is a very good grenade. Like, it's unfortunately just the freeze and the pheromone canister is kind of a problem where there's low amount and like a very like concentrated effect where it's like, it's very good. It's like a feast or famine, I guess is the best way to put it. You'll feel really good when you get like 10 bugs at once, either frozen or pheromoned. But very often, like, if you don't get that situation going, you feel pretty bad, because there's a lot of ways for Scout to freeze stuff, and there's now a way for Scout to reliably pheromone stuff without relying on a grenade that is a little bit finicky sometimes. So yeah, that's kind of an issue. But again, these are very good grenades. If they work really well, but again, low number of carried amount is like, and resupply, just not the most efficient when it comes to like current like weapon mods and everything. A grenade that does not have that problem, however, is the Voltaic Stun Sleeper. The funny boomerang. Basically, some dwarf looked at boomerang, it's like, we must have a taser. And they built the taser into a boomerang, and I love it. So, you carried amount 8. I'm pretty sure 8 is the highest grenade carried amount in the game. You have a lot of these, and you may expect that. That's pretty good. It's even better, because whenever resupply, you get 4. So you will have a massive amount of these grenades. Grenades, I guess, it's grenades. You know, it's more of a boomerang, but yeah. And it does do a decent amount of damage, 35 damage, and it applies the electrical effect. It's not the electrical effect of the IFG. This is the legit damage over time effect. So it applies a decent amount of damage on hit, and it does the small DOT over time, electrical DOT. It can bounce up to 9 times and has a healthy stun duration of 8.5 seconds. So basically, you throw it out, it'll bounce between targets, it'll apply the electrical effect, it'll do damage upon impact, and it'll stun them. And as far as I know, Praetorians, Grunts, and everything smaller than that are affected by the stun, but oppressors and like bigger targets like bulks and all stuff don't get stunned. But Bactera, Grunts, Praetorians, they all get stunned, and they all pretty much get crippled by this, since it's a very efficient way to get stun off. So basically, this is pretty terrible against bulks or oppressors, but against like Praetorians and like West stuff, it's very good. Now, of course, this thing has like barely any armor pen at all, so it's like, but again, it's like you're not really going for like armor pen on this thing. It's like it'll be pretty terrible against like Praetorians in terms of actually killing them, but that's not really the point in my opinion. The main thing with this grenade is AoE crowd control, similar to the IFG. However, the IFG is more of a concentrated area. Basically, when you use the IFG, you basically throw the grenade out and basically say, this area is off limits. If you go for this area, you're going to be slowed, you're going to take more damage, and you're going to die. The Voltaic Stun Sweeper is more aggressive. Basically, you throw this thing out, and it'll bounce pretty, it'll just go from target to target in a pretty wide area. And it'll basically do a lot of damage, relatively, and apply the electrical damage over time effect, and it'll stun them. This is very good for when you're dealing with like small packs of like grunts, basically. So like you see like 20 grunts come at you, and you like throw this out. Basically, half of that group is crippled, basically, because this is like a decent amount of damage. 35 damage and an electrical DOT over when it reaches its completion does a decent amount of damage, and once you throw this thing out, combined with a stun, you basically just dealt with half of the swarm, of that 20 grunt swarm, basically. Or you severely crippled them at the very least. Because it is very efficient. This thing shreds web spitters very well, because it just, they have barely any health, so, you see a pack of web spitters spawn, you throw this thing out, they're basically going to be dealt with, no problem. Even, has 4 and 5, I guarantee, if they don't die, they'll be very close to dying, so it's very efficient to stun them and deal with them really easily. But the main thing is you want to stun stuff, and you want do a little bit of chip damage, which is very good against grunts, a little bit less important against Praetorians for damage, but way more important for the stun, obviously. So this is very good for stunning general swarms, and it's very good for actually it's halfway decent against swarmers and nail that stuff, the little jellyfish dudes. It's actually half decent when dealing with them. It's not the most efficient in the world, but most of your Scout doesn't have the best AoE in the world. He has the Zukovs. The M1000 is not good against swarmers, but the plasma carbine, he has the Zukov. The boomstick is not bad. But you don't really have the best anti-swarmer or nail dat stuff in ever compared to Driller, for example. Driller has a flamethrower, and yeah, that deals with swarmers real well, but you don't really actually have a good anti-swarmer tool. And Stun Sweeper and the Boomerang is very efficient because, again, sure, I'll hit 9 of them, but this is a very throw and forget weapon. much more than like the IFG, because you don't even need to like track like, oh, I have to wob it. Basically, it's like, oh, I had to wob it across this chasm, for example. You just throw this thing, and so long as it's in range, it'll hit stuff, and it'll do a decent amount of damage. It'll stun stuff, and it's a very fire and forget weapon, which I really like, because very often it's like, the last thing you're going to sink a good portion of the time is in the middle of like a heat of like swarm combat is, oh, I have to wob this grenade this direction at this height to make sure I hit the target correctly, or I should check to make sure like I shouldn't like accidentally freeze my teammate by accident. In the middle of a heated swarm event where like 5 Mactera are after me, and there's a bulk on like the left side of the cavern. There's a oppressor and a Praetorian squad on the right, and everyone's getting chased around. Like very often, it's like you won't be able to make the best grenade decisions sometimes. Like, yeah, it's like you may like a drawer of the C4. You may not make the best decisions in the heat of a moment. And the Voltaic Stun Sweeper only affects bugs. Is a very efficient stun, and a very efficient way to apply the electrical debuff. So overall, I would say it's a very efficient way to get stunned, get electrical debuffs, and just get a little bit of chip damage, deal with grunts, Praetorians, and swarmers, and stuff like that in that range, including Mactera, rather efficient way. So overall, I would say it's like the best. Like, I had the most fun with a boomerang, because boomerang is just fun. Pheromone Canister is pretty good. Free Cryo Grenade's pretty good. Like, all these grenades are good, but I would say that honestly, they actually managed to like wind these up in like a very convenient way. The IFG and the Cryo Grenade are much more focused on single target DPS, where Cryo Grenade and like IFG either through like the weakening effect that increase 40% damage to everything within a radius of the IFG, or a Cryo Grenade freezing stuff and making it take triple damage. Makes it very good against like single targets like Praetorians, oppressors, bulks, and again like grunts are good, and grunts, exploders, and all that stuff too. Like these are all like pretty good at like dealing with AoE stuff. It's just that these are more inclined to deal with single targets. Well, Pheromone Canisters and Voltaic Stun Sweepers are very good against AoE. These are like pure AoE. They won't do much of Praetorians besides like the stun and like the clogging potential for Pheromone. But that's not really their point. Their point is to clog up and like deal with like large swarms, and they do that pretty well. So yeah, overall I would say all these are good grenades, but I definitely would my preferences I would say are Voltaic Stun Sweeper first, IFG second, Pheromone Canister third, Cryo Grenade fourth for my overall fun and enjoyment and how much I like them personally. Now of course, play however you want. I haven't really done Cryo Grenade as much as I probably should. I really haven't done that much. I did a mission to, I tested this stuff out. Like I tested all these out before I made this little video, but again, if you find a way that all these work together really well, I probably most definitely missed something, but this is just my general thoughts, and like, it's 2 a.m. right now, so it's like, so I may not be in the best state to recall perfect details and all that stuff, so. But again, play how you want. This is my general thoughts. Just because I want to talk about DRG and just get into YouTube stuff again, so yeah. But either way, hope you all enjoyed the video, everyone. Appreciate you stopping by. I will be trying to get the other videos out relatively soon, but I appreciate you stopping by, everyone. Hope you hope you all have a good night, everyone. Yeah, it's 2 a.m., so I'm sorry, no. My brain is starting to shut down. It's not good, but yeah. Hope you all have a good night, everyone. Appreciate you stopping by. I'll try and get the videos going as soon as possible. I have a bigger video plan in the background I'm working on right now. This is more of just like an extra thing I'm just showing and talking about right now while I work on a big major project in the background. So, and it's not going to be like an hour video that's like, yeah, heavily edited. No, it's going to be relatively simple, but it's a project I'm working on in the background and all that stuff. So yeah, but anyway, again, appreciate you stopping by. Good night, everyone, and hope I see you all in the next video or stream whenever I do that. I may be actually streaming on YouTube again, or not again. I may be streaming on either Twitch again or YouTube, I may see how stuff is going, because, you know, Twitch is on fire, so, yeah. Either way, good everyone. Hope you all enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe, and comment if you do decide to do so. And, yeah, thank you again for stopping by, everyone. Good night.